Hello guys, you're on the Stolen Audio Diaries. Subscribe and like.
I should have known Amy was going to pull something. It was a Thursday night, one of those weirdly warm early spring evenings in Chicago where the wind off the lake is more breeze than bite. I'd booked a table at a rooftop restaurant in the West Loop, the kind of place with reclaimed wood tables, Edison bulbs, and a menu that uses the word infused way too often. This dinner, it wasn't just a meal. It was the product of months of careful emails, calls, and small talk. My sh*T at locking down a group of private investors who could take my consulting firm to the next level. Amy came because she always came. At first, she'd say things like, "You need someone who knows how to charm a room." And back then, I believed her. I used to think her confidence complemented mine. But something had changed, and not recently. Maybe it had been simmering for years, and I'd just been too wrapped up in work or too afraid to admit that we weren't a team anymore. We were already tense before we left the house. She'd taken forever to get ready, tried on at least 3 dresses, then settled on a sleek black one that made heads turn. Not that I minded, she looked stunning. But there was a tightness to her smile that I couldn't ignore, a sort of coiled energy under her skin. The moment we sat down at the long wooden table, I knew I was in for a bumpy ride. There were 6 of us total, me, Amy, and 4 investors. 2 of them were a couple from Seattle who owned a software firm, Real Tech Money. The third was a younger guy named Tyler, flashy watch and all, who kept glancing at Amy just a little too long. The fourth was an older man, Gordon, who wore loafers without socks and had that calm, "I own real estate in Napa" demeanor. Things were going fine, or at least passable, until the entrees came out. Gordon asked me where I saw the firm in 5 years, and I leaned in, finally hitting my stride. I started laying out the expansion plans. New hires, partnerships, a push into green energy clients. I could feel the momentum building. Then, out of nowhere, Amy leaned back in her chair and let out this laugh. Loud, dry. The kind of laugh that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up because you know it's not about something funny. It's about you. "You're pathetic, Josh," she said, still laughing. "This is just a sad attempt to look important." The table went dead quiet. I felt like the floor had just disappeared from under me. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard her right. But then I saw the looks. The way Tyler's eyes darted down to his plate. The slight cringe from the woman across from me. How Gordon shifted in his chair like he suddenly wished he was anywhere else. Every muscle in my body tensed. My jaw locked, and my heart started pounding in my ears. I stared at Amy, trying to make sense of what she'd just done. She just smirked, picked up her wine glass, and took a slow sip, eyes never leaving mine. I could have said something. God, I wanted to. I wanted to tear into her with something sharp and final. Something that would make her regret every syllable she just spit out. But instead, I did the only thing I could do. I smiled. Not because I was okay, I wasn't. But because I knew I couldn't afford to let this dinner spiral. I needed these people to think I was composed, stable, still worth betting on. So I forced a laugh, made some half-assed joke about my wife's cutting honesty, and tried to pivot the conversation back to projections. But it was like trying to patch a sinking boat with duct tape. The energy had shifted. The table was stiff now, conversations clipped and surface level. Amy, meanwhile, seemed completely unfazed. She smiled at the waiter, ordered another glass of wine, and started asking Tyler about his trip to Paris like nothing had happened. Like she hadn't just detonated a grenade in the middle of my pitch. I barely tasted my food. I couldn't stop replaying that moment. The way she said it, so casually cruel. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was humiliating. Sabotage with a smile. And what got me most? No apology. No remorse. Not even a sideways glance of regret. She just carried on, laughing and sipping and leaning in a little too close to Tyler. Like this was her show now. By the time dessert came around, some overpriced panna cotta no one touched, I'd stopped talking altogether. I just nodded when people spoke and kept checking my watch like I had somewhere better to be. Amy didn't say another word to me for the rest of the dinner. But I felt her eyes on me, watching, waiting, and I knew, deep down, this wasn't about one dinner. This was something else. A warning sh*T, maybe. or the opening scene of something much worse. The second our guests began to stand, pushing in chairs and offering polite goodbyes, I felt my body unclench. It was like I'd been holding my breath for 2 hours straight and only just now remembered how to exhale. Gordon shook my hand on the way out, still trying to maintain some thin layer of professionalism. Interesting ideas, he muttered. Not a compliment. Not exactly a dismissal either. Just vague enough to leave me hanging. The others followed, their smiles tight, their small talk brief. Tyler gave Amy a lingering glance, and she smiled back with that same smug amusement, like the dinner had gone exactly how she'd wanted it to. I scanned the table once they were gone. Half-finished drinks, untouched panna cotta, a folded napkin with a red lipstick smudge still warm from Amy's careless pout. I turned to say something to her, maybe something diplomatic like, "What the hell was that?" But she was gone. I didn't even see her leave. My phone buzzed. A text from one of the investors. "Thanks for the invite. Let's talk next week." No exclamation point, no emoji, just cold words from someone who'd probably already made up their mind. I stepped out into the cool night air, jaw tight, eyes scanning the sidewalk. And that's when I saw her, Amy, standing beside some blacked-out BMW at the curb, her hands on another man's chest like she owned him. And not in a friendly, polite good-to-see-you-again way, no. Her body was pressed into his like gravity couldn't pull them apart fast enough. And she was kissing him. Not a peck. Not drunk and clumsy. Like she meant it. I froze. For a second, I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The same woman who just gutted me in front of 4 potential business partners. My wife was tangled up with a man I didn't recognize. Some guy in a dark sport coat, slick hair, expensive shoes. Like a placeholder from one of those get back at your ex revenge ads. Before I even knew what I was doing, I was already walking toward them. Amy. She turned slowly, like I was just another mild inconvenience in her night. Like I was a barista calling out the wrong name. "Oh," she said. "There you are." I was shaking. Actually shaking. "What the hell is this?" The guy backed up half a step, clearly not expecting me. Amy didn't even flinch. "Calm down, Josh. You're making a scene." "I'm making a scene?" I could hear my voice rise, feel my fists clenching at my sides. "You're out here kissing some guy like you're in a music video, and I'm the one making a scene? It just happened," she said, shrugging. "God, you're always so paranoid. You blow everything out of proportion. Maybe if you stopped acting like everyone's out to get you, people wouldn't feel the need to sneak around." My jaw dropped. "So this is my fault now?" "I didn't say that," she said, cool as ever. "I'm just saying maybe if you weren't so obsessed with your image, with your little business fantasy, you'd have noticed what's really going on." I looked at the guy. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Who is he?" Amy gave a lazy glance in his direction. "Does it matter?" I swear, I almost laughed. That cold, bitter kind that slips out when you've got nothing else left. "You embarrassed me in front of people I've spent months trying to impress. You humiliated me, Amy. And now this." She rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. Those people don't care about you. They're just sharks waiting to see if you bleed." I wanted to scream. I wanted to yell so loud the entire block heard it. But instead, I just stood there, staring at the woman I married, the woman I built a life with who had just torched it all without blinking. I didn't say another word. I turned around, walked back inside, grabbed my coat, and left. And she didn't follow. Not even a text. She just got into that stranger's car, like it was the most normal thing in the world. And as I sat in my car, hands trembling on the wheel, I realized something I hadn't fully accepted until that moment. This wasn't her spiraling. This wasn't some temporary lapse or midlife crisis. This was deliberate, calculated. She wanted me off balance. She wanted me to react. Because as long as I was reacting, she was in control. So I didn't call her that night. I didn't rage text or demand answers. I didn't beg. I sat there in the parking garage for nearly an hour, watching the city lights flicker across the hood of my car. I didn't forgive her, but I knew. Her game had only just begun. The drive home was silent. Not quiet, silent. That thick kind of silence that hums in your ears and makes everything feel louder. The turn signal, the hum of the tires, the occasional honk in the distance. All of it just background noise to the war going on in my head. Amy sat in the passenger seat like nothing had happened. Actually, no. She didn't just sit there. She laughed. She scrolled. She chatted. I remember glancing over and seeing her with her phone pressed to her ear, giggling at whatever the person on the other end was saying. Like the last 2 hours hadn't happened. Like I hadn't caught her outside, kissing another man in plain sight, in public, after gutting me mid-dinner like I was the punchline to some cruel joke. Yeah, I know. He's just being dramatic, she whispered. Then a short laugh. No, it's fine. I'll deal with it later. I didn't say a word. I didn't trust myself to speak. Because if I did, I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stop. She hung up eventually, tossed her phone into her purse, and sighed like she'd just wrapped up a long work call. Can we not do this right now? She said, looking out the window. I'm tired, and you're obviously in your feelings. I gripped the steering wheel harder. My knuckles were turning white. In my feelings? I repeated. She didn't even respond. Just crossed her legs and adjusted the mirror like we were arguing over takeout, and not the fact that she'd kissed a stranger while I was inside trying to save my company's future. When we got home, she went straight upstairs. Didn't wait for me. Didn't ask if I was okay. Didn't apologize. She just floated through the front door like a ghost passing through walls, left her heels by the stairs, and vanished into the bedroom. I sat on the couch, stunned. My suit jacket still on. Tie loosened. Just stuck. That should have been the end of it, right? Just a garbage night. Filed under marital disaster. One of those blow-ups you recover from after a few cold shoulders and passive-aggressive breakfasts. But something in me had shifted. Couldn't sleep that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself I was overreacting. That maybe I'd imagined the kiss. That maybe the wine had gotten to her and the guy was just a friend. That maybe there was still a version of this that wasn't as awful as it seemed. But I didn't believe that. Not really. Because I knew Amy. She was smart. Too smart. Everything she did had a purpose, a twist, a hook. And I couldn't help but think. If she was willing to blow up a business dinner like that, what else was she doing? That's when I remembered something my buddy Marcus told me once. We were at his kid's birthday party. One of those awkward suburban backyard things where the dads are all half drunk by 3 p.m. He mentioned how he caught his teenage daughter hiding messages behind a calculator app. It's not even about cheating, he said. It's about the lengths people will go to when they've already decided you don't deserve the truth. At the time, I'd laughed, thought it was paranoid. But now, it didn't feel so far-fetched. I sat up. My heart was racing, and I wasn't even sure what I was doing yet. I walked into the kitchen, opened the drawer where Amy kept her phone charging, and stared at it. Just sitting there, screen dark, quiet. It wasn't locked. Or, at least, it wasn't locked in the way I expected. Her main messages were clean. Vanilla. Work group chats, texts from her sister, a few memes from friends. Nothing that screamed betrayal. Nothing out of place. But then I opened one of the messaging apps she barely used. The one with a name I barely recognized. Looked like something Gen Z used to trade playlists. It asked for a password. I guessed the dog's name. Wrong. Tried her birthday. Wrong. Then I typed in my own initials, the ones engraved on her bracelet. Bingo. And that's when the bottom dropped out. Photos, videos, texts that were so graphic, so deliberately and asterisk mate, they felt like punches to the gut. She'd sent them to someone saved under just a letter, M. He wasn't just some guy she'd kissed. He was someone she knew, someone she'd been with. This had been going on for weeks, maybe months. I sat down at the kitchen table, her phone still in my hand, and just stared at the screen. One message stood out from the rest. He's still trying so hard. Poor guy. I almost feel bad. But I miss feeling something real. I should have felt anger, rage, something explosive. But I didn't. What I felt was worse. I felt cold. Because the reality wasn't just that she'd cheated. It was that I didn't even recognize the person she'd become. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. It was almost funny, in a bitter kind of way. The night before, I'd been polishing my pitch deck, rehearsing how I'd introduce our firm's value proposition over dinner. Now I was quietly planning how to disappear from my own life without waking the person sleeping in the next room. Amy was still upstairs, passed out like nothing had happened, while I sat at the kitchen table with her phone screen still lit in front of me. The last message she sent was time-stamped 2:17 a.m., half an hour after we got home. I hadn't even heard her sneak out of bed. She must have gone into the bathroom, or maybe just laid there beside me in the dark, texting this man while I tried to remember how to breathe. I turned off her phone and slid it back into its charger, careful to leave everything exactly as I'd found it. I didn't want her to know I'd seen anything. Not yet, because this wasn't the kind of wound you screamed about. This wasn't rage. It was surgical, cold, precise. She thought she was 2 steps ahead of me, that she had control, that she could play both lives and I'd be too busy or too spineless to notice. But I had something she didn't. Plan R. Started as a joke. That's how I used to talk about it. A dumb contingency idea I toyed with back when Amy started making comments like, "You'd never leave me, you're too predictable." I'd smile, play along, and say something like, "Sure, but I've got Plan R in my back pocket just in case." She thought it meant Plan Revenge. But it didn't. It meant Plan Reset. A year ago, long before I had any proof of anything, I started noticing how Amy talked to me, how she looked through me, how the compliments turned to critiques. I don't know what exactly made me start preparing for the exit, but something deep down told me I needed a parachute, just in case. So I built one. That morning, after I heard the faint creak of the bedroom door close upstairs, I went to the hallway closet, pulled down the shoebox I'd tucked behind a stack of old towels, and took out the key. The safe was hidden behind a false panel in the garage. I installed it myself, back when Amy was at a bachelorette weekend in Denver. It was nothing fancy, just enough to store a few documents, a burner phone, and the most important thing of all, freedom. Inside the safe, I found the folder marked R. Seattle apartment deed signed under my LLC's name. Lease paid a year in advance. Bank account numbers, not secret accounts, just quiet ones. No joint access. No paper statements. Accounts where I'd been siphoning small amounts over time. Just enough to be unnoticed, but enough to start over if I had to. Contracts from an old client who still owed me a favor. A remote consulting gig I could do anonymously from anywhere. Even a backup passport, not fake, just expedited under my full legal name, shipped to a P.O. box Amy didn't know existed. Back when I built this plan, it felt like a mental escape hatch. Like something you do when you can't talk to anyone about what's wrong, so you put your faith into documents and quiet backup plans. Now it felt like salvation. I thumbed through the papers slowly, methodically. My mind was weirdly clear. I wasn't panicked. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was focused. Focused in a way I hadn't been in months. I pulled out a blank notebook and started writing. Sell the car. Use the LLC to lease something new. Change phone plan. Burner number until I get the new setup. Cancel joint cards, not loudly, just delays and excuses. Fraud alert. Lost card. Replacement on the way. Tell work I'll be remote next quarter. They'll be annoyed, but they'll adjust. Slowly vanish. I didn't want revenge. Not really. I didn't want to catch her in the act and throw the phone at her feet and shout like some soap opera husband. I wanted out. I wanted air again. I wanted peace. I wanted to feel like a man in control of his own life. And that meant leaving before she knew I was gone. I knew Amy would assume any change in routine was just me being moody. That was the beauty of it. I could pull back gradually. Fewer texts, less engagement, letting her lean deeper into whatever fantasy world she was building, and she wouldn't notice. She was too busy filming her vlog, curating her perfect online image. The fewer questions I asked, the freer she felt to do whatever she wanted. That was part of the trap. Let her think I was unraveling. Let her believe she'd won. The only thing she wouldn't see coming? That I wasn't going to fight for her. I wasn't going to beg, or plead, or get dragged into her games anymore. I was going to disappear, quietly, methodically, and when she finally turned around to gloat, There'd be no one left standing across from her. You'd think she would have noticed. That's the part that still gets me. Not the affair. Not the kiss. Not the messages. Not even the way she laughed in my face like my humiliation was some kind of art performance. No, what haunts me is how easy it was to start fading. I tested it the next morning. Usually, I'd make her a latte, 2 pumps of hazelnut, almond milk, extra foam, because God forbid it wasn't exactly right. I'd leave it on the counter next to her vitamins, with a sticky note, "You've got this, rock star." I'd been doing that for years. But that morning I didn't. I just poured myself a cup of black coffee and sat at the table in silence. Amy walked into the kitchen a few minutes later, hair still in a bun, phone already in hand, face lit by the glow of her front-facing camera as she started filming her daily RWM vlog. "Hey guys," she chirped, facing the phone. "So today's vibe is definitely low-maintenance chic but make it productive." I watched her glide past me, her voice bouncing off the walls like I wasn't even there. She never once looked at the counter. No coffee, no sticky note, no questions. I was invisible, and in that moment, I realized something I hadn't been willing to admit before. I'd been pouring into this woman, into our life, for years, and she'd stopped noticing a long time ago, maybe even before I did. So I stopped. No more texts during the day. No more "how's your meeting?" or "do you want anything from the store?" I stopped tagging her in posts, stopped liking her photos, stopped checking her location. She didn't say a word. She just kept recording. Mornings with perfect lighting, mid-afternoon snack hauls, pouty selfies with captions like, "Some days are harder than others, but we keep smiling." I didn't know who she was performing for anymore. Herself? Her followers? Some imaginary version of a woman who had it all together? All I knew was none of it was for me. We still shared the same house, same bed, same dinner table. But I started to pull away in the places that counted. I stopped refilling her shampoo. Stopped folding her laundry into little stacks on the bed. Stopped buying those gluten-free snack bars she loved. At first, I thought she might bring it up. Make some passing comment like, "You forgot the almond butter again." But nothing. She was too busy. Too busy arranging outfits for photo shoots. Too busy taking meetings with brand reps for skincare products she didn't even use. Too busy smiling for a phone screen that gave her more validation than I ever could. I started sleeping later, staying up later, watching old blues documentaries with the volume low and the lights off, just letting the quiet soak in. She didn't ask why. At dinner one night, I made pasta for myself and left her to fend for whatever detox trend she was trying. She sat across from me scrolling, nodding along to some TikTok audio playing on loop. "Babe," she said suddenly. I still on her phone. "Do you think I should start a separate page for fitness stuff? Like, would that dilute the brand?" I stared at her. "What brand?" She didn't even hear the sarcasm. Just kept scrolling. "Never mind. I'll ask my manager." Manager. She had a manager now. Some kid named Reese who used to intern for a travel blogger and now fancied himself a digital media guru. He called our house once at 9 p.m. to talk about cross-platform synergy. I hung up. As the days blurred together, I kept peeling myself away, layer by layer. No more morning check-ins. No more post-it notes with dumb doodles. No more pretending I cared about the sponsorships or her follower count. I canceled our streaming services and she didn't even notice, just switched to watching content on her phone in bed with headphones in. It got to the point where I could go entire days without speaking more than a handful of words to her. And still nothing. Not a flicker of recognition. Not even a sarcastic, "Wow, you've been real chatty lately." I think she liked it that way. Silence meant I wasn't interfering. Silence meant she could script the narrative without any resistance. She probably told herself we were just in a phase. Or maybe she thought she'd finally worn me down. She didn't realize I was already leaving. Not physically, not yet. But emotionally, I was halfway to Seattle. My name was already on a new lease. My backup phone had a number only my brother knew. My consulting client had wired the first payment. I was watching her from across the dinner table like I was watching a stranger on a train. I stopped asking why she did it. Why she chose to cheat, to lie, to tear holes in something we'd built from scratch. Because I already knew the answer. She didn't want a husband. She wanted a mirror. And when I stopped reflecting the image she wanted, the image that made her feel adored, admired, centered, she stopped seeing me. So I gave her what she clearly needed most. Space. Lots of it. And the best part? She never even noticed I was gone. At dinner with friends, Amy tried again. Some tired joke about me, consulting myself into irrelevance. The table laughed nervously, but I didn't flinch. No glare, no comeback, just silence. I looked at her like she was background noise, and that silence, it hit louder than any words I could have said. Her smile faltered. That's when I knew I wasn't reacting anymore. I wasn't in her orbit. Her game needed an audience, and I had finally walked off the stage. Back home, she tried snapping me back into her reality. Are you seriously sulking? She sneered. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't defend myself. I just slid a folder across the table, legal paperwork, separation documents, everything. No, I said calmly. I'm just done. For the first time since I'd known her, she didn't have a response. Her mouth opened slightly, then closed. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She just sat there stunned, powerless. That night, while she slept, I left. No note, no explanation, just gone. I drove straight through the night to Texas, to a small apartment under an alias I'd leased 6 months earlier. No social media, no credit card alerts. I became air. She didn't call, didn't chase. She thought it was a tantrum, but I wasn't bluffing. I was already gone before I closed that door. What she called a phase I had already filed as a past life. The first few days were quiet in a way that felt holy. Mattress on the floor, ramen noodles for dinner, blues playing low on the speaker. I wasn't lonely. I was untethered. I called my brother once to let him know I was alive. No one else. No check-ins. No pretending. I read. I walked. I built small things out of wood just to feel something real in my hands. I had nothing, but I had peace. And that was everything. Amy's Instagram turned grayscale. Quotes about healing and rising strong. A selfie with our dog. Just us now. People ate it up. Comments flooded in. You're so brave, he didn't deserve you. I said nothing. Let her rewrite history. Let her play widow to a man she'd quietly buried long ago. The truth didn't need defending. The truth was I escaped. And no filter could make her feel better about what she'd lost. Slowly, I came back. Not to anyone else, to me. I stopped curating my life. I didn't explain or apologize. I just lived. I picked up old books. I cooked badly and laughed at myself. I learned to be enough without being someone's mirror. Amy didn't break me. She just held one up long enough for me to see how far I'd bent. And when I saw it, I walked away from the man I'd become and back into who I was. Now, when people ask, I just say, we grew apart. That's all they get. The rest, that's mine. I don't owe anyone the story. I lived it. And the best part? I'm no longer hungry for approval from people who only saw what they wanted to see. I wake up every day knowing I didn't lose anything. I left. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. Just go. Quiet. Certain. Free.
Bye bye guys, thank you for watching.